In this lecture, we are tackling probably one of the most important societal questions out there. How many people can we fit on our planet, and are we approaching the carrying capacity of our planet? The carrying capacity is an ecological term. It basically just means what is the population at which population stops growing because there's not enough resources to sustain its growth. Okay, this is what the population growth chart has looked like, and you can see, in 1950, 1960, there was this major explosion, and the growth curve is exponential because it always grows by a percentage. It doesn't grow by a finite amount, and every time something increases by a percentage, not a finite amount, it's going to grow larger as the population gets larger. For example, 1% of 8 billion people is a lot more than 1% of 8 million people. So the larger the population is, the more people are added to it, the exponential growth is inevitable. Okay. Now, the population growth rate has increased over the years, so it gets more and more and more and more. And what's interesting of recent times is that it appears that the growth trend is slowing down. We are still growing, the population is still growing, but the rate at which is growing is no longer increasing, it's starting to decrease. So potentially, if that trend holds up, 20 or 30 or 50 years from now, maybe it's the case the population starts to decline, but we don't know that for sure. Generally, nations that are developed and have good infrastructure and take care of their people, they show less of a population growth. Like look here in North America, like things are pretty good in America, and the population has not. When you look at how much its growth has changed, it's not nearly as staggering as some of the other places in the world. So an important question is, how full are we? If we were to ask that question just here in our continent, North America, we got 340 million people in the USA, 40 million in Canada, 130 million in Mexico. How full, with all those people, how full are we? How many more people could we fit on North America? Well, they generally say you need about a half an acre per person to sustain the caloric intake of just a standard diet, and that would probably assume fairly efficient farming. You might need to have a greenhouse. You might have to have some special tools to get the most out of your land, but about a half an acre per person is a fairly reasonable estimate. Well, there's half a billion people, 500 million, half a billion people in North America. If they each need a half of an acre, that would be 250 million acres that are required to sustain everybody that we have currently. Now, when you count up how many acres that there actually are, there's 1.9 billion in America, 2.25 billion in Canada, about a third of a billion in Alaska, and half a billion in Mexico. So there's close to 5 billion acres in the North American continent. We only need 250 million, so let's assume that only half of those 5 billion acres were farmable. There are some mountain ranges and some deserts and things. I would argue that you can still grow food on mountains and deserts, even if it's a little trickier, but let's say only half of those acres could be used for any type of agriculture. That's still 2.5 billion acres. Only 250 million are required. Under those estimates, we're only about 10% of the carrying capacity. We're only about 10% full. So we have got a lot of room to grow. We could fit a lot more people on our planet. I don't think we're anywhere near to being full, at least in North America. But that really depends on our consumption, right? It really depends on how much we want to stretch out. If you want to have 3 or 4 or 600 acres just to roam about, then that's a lot of land that can't be used to grow food. If we're building big parking lots and mega malls everywhere, that's all land that can be used to grow food. So, that being 10% full could be very drastically different depending on our human behavior. And that's why it's tricky to come up with estimates about how full we are, because it really depends on our sin nature, right? It depends on how greedy we are. It depends on how many resources we want to hoard for ourselves and not share with the people around us. And it's my opinion that I would always prefer to take a more simple life, and if it meant that there could be more room for other people on our to have what they need in our country. I would always choose to take less if it meant that it wasn't going to cost the life of somebody else that would literally starve of the resources that they need. And that is an opinion I think Jesus himself would hold as well. And it would be an opinion that I think all believers would be challenged by. What is it that you really need, and what can you do without so that you can share with the people around you? All right, so let's say that a big piece of this puzzle, how full are we, depends on our society. It depends on our infrastructure more than anything. The more efficient the farming, the more efficient the manufacturing, the more able you are to get what you need and trade with the people around you, the more efficient the society is, and the more people you can fit for the land that you have. So it's got major societal and political implications to it. And that's why we're going to veer sort of outside of the realm of biology here, because you really can't talk about how full the planet is. You really can't talk about how much land is needed to sustain life without addressing the human behavior side of it. What is it that you're willing to live with? What type of government would you need? What type of infrastructure would you need to get the most bang for your buck in terms of the resources that you need? So we're going to dive out, jump off the rails here from biology and look more, socioeconomically at the question. And I think it might just be a fun, thought-provoking lecture here for you. So I'm going to present what I call Jackson Trust. And Jackson Trust started off a few years ago as just like a funny, thing to think about. But now, even in the last 5 or 6 years, with some of the things that have happened in our country, what things that have happened in our government and our federal government and whatnot, you might find that some of these things I'm going to talk about here are more relevant than probably you thought if you watched one of the earlier lectures. So I think discussions around things that I'm talking about here in Jackson Trust are very important. And my hope is that Jackson Trust is sort of a rallying point for some conversations here about what life could look like with the right infrastructure in place. Jackson Trust gets its name from a place not too far from the Twin Cities called Jackson Meadow. And in Jackson Meadow, they did an interesting thing. It's a big land development. And in a typical suburban development, what you would have would be kind of like half-acre parcels. What you're seeing here on the left-hand side of the screen. And in Jackson Trust, they tried the cluster model. So they shrunk the houses. Not all the houses are small. A lot of them are, but there are some bigger houses and some bigger lots. But many of the lots are small, and the houses are small as well. And in exchange, they reclaimed all of this land that then the inhabitants of Jackson Trust can use to roam. Okay, and I just think that this is such a cool model. This is a really old idea. This is how towns and villages in Europe were built. It's a really great idea. It's an idea that we've gotten far away from here in the United States. Most land is developed with this typical suburban mindset where we each need a big mansion and a half-acre lot. But I would be curious to know what the people in Jackson Meadow think of the place that they live. I don't know any of them. I've never talked to them, but I would always be curious if they enjoy their life. It's not going to be utopia. There's going to be squabbles between the neighbors, but I'm a big fan of the idea of having these wide open spaces that everybody can enjoy. it's just a better use of land. It's better for animals to roam, and it's better for, I think, human enjoyment. I would much rather look at a rolling hill that's undeveloped. Even if I have a fenced-in lot that's smaller, I would much rather have a fenced-in lot that's small if I knew I could walk outside the door and take a really great hike through an incredible scene of nature. That's my own personal bias, right? But that's what Jackson Meadow has done, and so that's where the name for Jackson Trust comes from, because the whole idea of the trust is it's an incentive to get people to cluster together. And I think it's good. Clustering is not only good for the environment, I think it's also really good for community. It fosters community. You know, I've found that the people that are within slipper distance of me are the people that I see the most. I live in a inner city neighborhood that has lots kind of close together like this, and I've got some of my best friends on the planet within a mile of driving distance from me, and I rarely see them. I don't see them nearly as much as I see my neighbors who are slipper distance from me. So there's a major component of proximity to our relationships that I think people don't really think about. And if we created neighborhoods that were more slipper distance, where you lived with, you could put on your slippies, walk right across the street to your friends, I mean, it is just a really good way to live in terms of community. So I love the cluster model, and Jackson Trust would seek to incentivize people to adopt more of a cluster style of living. And so then the question becomes, how do you enforce that? And then what are the incentives? What are you giving the people in return for their choice to live like this? Jackson Trust is basically like a big HOA where you pay a fee, and in exchange for the fee, you get some pretty cool perks, some cool amenities. So I'll pitch those today. I'm wearing the hat of the Jackson Trust salesman here in this presentation. I'll pitch it to you, and then at the end, I'll be curious to know if you are enticed. Would you sign up for Jackson Trust or not? All right, so here we go. Jackson Trust relies on what I call the compressor. The compressor is an audio engineering term. You use a compressor when things are too loud to bring down the volume, and the compressor also boosts the volume of the quiet things, and it makes for a really nice mix. Nothing is too imbalanced. And so what the compressor does is basically like if you're somebody that's really stretching out and you are enjoying what is sort of a above average amount of resources, the compressor, I mean, you can certainly do that, but the compressor is going to start to fight you a little bit. There's like it's a taxation system that has an inflection point right about where we get outside of what's reasonable. And if you're outside of that point of reason, then the taxes really start to accrue. So here's an example of what it looks like. It's basically just a math equation, and this is the only fee that you have to pay to be a part of Jackson Trust. And so Jackson Trust doesn't have like an IRS type of thing. It doesn't have a tax receiving body. It's just literally a math equation. Jackson Trust doesn't care how much you make. Jackson Trust doesn't care about if you're married or not. The only fee that you pay is based upon how much space that you take up. So if you ever wanted to join Jackson Trust, you could clearly look at what the zoning is for your property, and you could punch in the square footage or the acreage, and it would be a math equation, fair across the board for everyone, and it would tell you what your tax is going to be. Very simple. So there would be various zonings. So like here you could see what the equation looks like for residential land plots. You can see there's an inflection point here, and then it sort of starts to skyrocket the more outside of reason we get. So in urban areas, you know, the inflection point's right at about 0.07 acres per person. So if you're taking up more than 0.07 acres per person, then it really starts to climb. If you're sub 0.05 acres per person, it doesn't really matter. You can, it's a really affordable fee. Or let's say you're in a residential area that's a little bit outside of the city. Maybe we'd call this the R1 designation. Then it's a little bit more agreeable. You can maybe own up close to an acre per person at a reasonable price point. For apartments and condos, your fee is not based upon the plot of land that you live on. The fee is based upon what's your square footage that you live in. And if you're a commercial enterprise, you own a business, it's also taxed on the square footage of your commercial space, but then also maybe it does include the land as well. And maybe you catch a break. Maybe the second floor and the third floor of your commercial building don't uh, add up in that calculation so steeply because you're all contained in a nice footprint. You know, it encourages you to build higher rather than sprawl out. Okay, so here's an example. Just keeping in mind some of these math equations here that I've plotted out. If you were in, let's say, what we would call the U1 residential zoning area, this is how the equation would work. Let's say you have a 1/10 of an acre plot. That's the size of my house that I live on. I live on a 1/10 of an acre. That's a pretty standard lot size for in the inner city. Well, it's all based upon density. So I've got 5 people living in my house. So there's only a 0.02 acre per person density for my home. And according to the equation, that's $15 a person. Okay, so each person in my house, if we want to be a part of Jackson Trust, we'd pay in $15 a month. So it'd be a total of $85 a month. If we doubled the lot and had 8 people living there, it'd be $20 a month, given that same equation. The equation doesn't change. You know, the equation has been set, and you just literally punch in the density per person. It will spit out what your fee is for Jackson Trust. Okay, you have a 1/4 acre lot. You got 5 people in it. Now it's $40. If you have a 1/4 acre lot and you only have 2 people there, now it's starting to get a little bit steep. You're paying $180 a month per person. It's still, you know, probably cheaper than your car insurance, but it's starting to be something that you would have to budget for. If you had a 1/4 acre lot and there was only 1 person living there, you had the whole 1/4 acre lot all to yourself. Now you're really starting to get outside that inflection point for this particular zone. And so you'd be looking at like $500 a month, starting to get a little spendy to be a part of Jackson Trust. And so you might not want to elect into Jackson Trust. Jackson Trust might not be the thing for you. Okay, if you had a 1/2 acre lot and only 1 person, now you're paying $1,000 a month. So this is really starting to hit you hard. You've got that whole big 1/2 an acre lot. It's just you. In the mind of Jackson Trust, you're sort of starting to step outside the bounds of what's reasonable. And so you probably would not want to elect into Jackson Trust if that was your situation. But let's say you live on that 1/2 acre lot and you really love the perks of Jackson Trust. You love the heart of Jackson Trust. And so you don't want to move, but you want to be a part of it. You definitely don't want to pay $1,000 a month. So what you do is you build, let's say, an ADU on the back of your property, and you have a family come live there. And so, and maybe you get some roommates. And so now 8 people, let's say, live in your lot. Now you're only paying $50 a month based upon the equation. So the compressor works on an equation. The equation is fair. The equation is never going to deceive you. If you know what your lot is and how many people are claiming residence there, you will know exactly what you will pay, and it will not change unless there's a big vote across the entire trust to change the equation. But the equation is applied equally to everyone, which is one of the beauties of math. Math is just, you can trust math. It is your best friend, okay? It will not betray you. All right, so that's how an example of what one of these compressor equations would look like. So for me, I'm paying $85 a month, and given the perks, I'm definitely going to sign up for Jackson Trust. It is the best deal on the planet for me. If you live by yourself on a 1/2 acre lot, it's probably not worth the $1,000 price point. Is sort of how it would shake out here. So let's talk about what some of these perks are. The first perk of Jackson Trust is that it seeks to give you affordable utilities. So Jackson Trust has its own electrical grid. You know, it's got solar farms, and it's got you get a tax. You know, you get like some sort of incentivized break on your fees to put solar panels up, and so those all feed into Jackson Trust's own electrical grid. And right now you pay about 13 cents a kilowatt. And my electrical bill, it varies, but it's usually between 80 and 120 bucks a month for a family of 4. Okay, the trust is going to give you that electricity at 7 cents a kilowatt. So already I'm saving about 50 bucks. And my fee to begin with was only 85. So now I'm only going to have to pay 35 bucks to be in Jackson Trust. But wait, but wait, there's more, okay? There's more. Jackson Trust also has its own network, its own phone, and its own network, and its own like internet. So right now, I paid 20 bucks a line, and when my kids are older, that's going to be about 100 bucks for all 5 of us, and then I pay $50 for internet, which isn't even really good. It keeps crapping out on me, and I keep calling the company, and they keep telling me they're going to send me a new one, and they never do. So Jackson Trust internet is really fast, and it's included in the membership. So you might have to pay for the phone at the beginning, but once you have it, it's not going to pay you for using the network. The network doesn't really cost the trust anything to operate. It's just wires in the ground. It costs a lot to put the wires in the ground, but once they're in the ground, it doesn't cost the trust anything to keep the network alive. So it doesn't make sense you'd have to gouge the people that are in your membership in your institution. So it's included. And for me, that'd be like $130 savings. So for me, no brainer. I would totally sign up for Jackson Trust because I am going to save 180 bucks. It only costs 85. So like I could join Jackson Trust tomorrow and I'm already saving myself $100 a month. Okay, but this is only the beginning. Okay, there's a lot more perks here that might be in the pipeline for Jackson Trust. So for one, Jackson Trust tries to create and preserve and carve out green space, very much like the Jackson Meadow approach. Green space is land that is exempt from the compressor. It does not get accounted for and included in the compressor equation. And generally, the trust tries to make sure that every person that is a member has at least 0.05 or even up to 10 acres of green space for them to enjoy. And your right to use that green space is tethered to your trust ID member. So if you become a trust member and you have sort of the ID number, you will be assigned some sort of land. You might be able to pick what plot of land it is that you want to be assigned to, but then you will be assigned to it. You will know what plot is your land that you're assigned to. That's your green space. You might have to share it with some people depending on supply and demand. But the hope would be that if you're somebody that needs more land, that you might even be able to get up to 10 acres of land that you can use for the green space. Now, it has restricted development. You can only build, let's say, 300 square feet per acre, so you can't really build a lot on it, but you can take, in green space, you can take any renewable resource out of it. Okay, you could log it, you could fish it, you could farm it, anything that's a renewable resource you can remove from that land. That's what the agreements of the trust say for green space. So let's look at what it would look like to apply Jackson Trust even right in my inner city block. Okay, this is where I live. I live in the West 7th neighborhood, and let's say that the trust applies an easement to some land that the city owns. Okay, so there's a really nice boulevard right next to my house here, and that when that easement is applied, it allows anybody that's tethered to it in the trust to take renewable resources out of it. Even if it's owned by somebody else, the easement allows you to take the resources out. And you can even maybe develop some of it, but it has to be restricted, only 300 square feet per acre, let's say. So there's this really nice boulevard here, and there's a big fence along 35E, but then there's this really nice hill where they've actually started planting apple trees and things. So let's say the city says, hey, we don't need that land. We want people to enjoy it. We want people to farm it and to grow it and to put gardens in it. So they are happy to put the Jackson Trust easement on it. And then let's say that there's a little slice of somebody's lot here. This is Chuck's lot, my neighbor Chuck, and he owns this rental property. And it's got this big yard that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, and maybe he doesn't want to have to worry about mowing the lawn, and so he says, hey, I'll I'll give that chunk up for an easement, and so Chuck would still own the plot, but he applies the trust easement to just this quadrant of his lot. Okay, maybe all these folks here are like, hey, we got this big set of garages back here, and we're more than happy for people to come and enjoy this part of our property. They can, put a bonfire pit there, or maybe grow an apple tree and come make apple cider or whatever they want to do. We're happy to let people come use this. Each person would still own their part, but they've maybe collectively decided they want to bundle this whole part of their plots to the trust easement designation. Maybe the trust even starts to buy some lots. There's a nice empty lot right here in the corner where there's nothing going on there, so maybe the trust buys it and now owns that, and that can be part of the green space that members can enjoy. And then maybe my neighbor Ed here has this really nice lot, and maybe he thinks the trust is kind of a little bit weird. Maybe it's too hippie for him, but as he's, as it keeps going on, he's like, oh, that's kind of cool. Maybe I'll let my piece of property be used for people, and he designates his plot with the easement that allows people to come enjoy it. And then as people start joining Jackson Trust, maybe some people, I join it, this person joins it, this person joins it, and they get assigned one of these plots. So their assignment is specific. They can't just go to any old green space. Like, let's say I get assigned to this spot right across this alley from me, and I've always wanted to have some chickens, and I've wanted to have a couple cows. So maybe with my easement, I make a little fence and I put my chickens in there, and I make another little fence and put my cow in there, and maybe I build like a little shed for my cow. Okay. And then I'm living my best country life in the inner city. I'm putting my rubber boots on, and I'm shoveling shit in the morning and feeding my cow, right? So go get that fresh milk, turn it into butter. I'd be living my best life. Okay, so that's sort of what the green space is like. It can be land that the trust owns, but it could also be land that the trust just applies an easement to that somebody else owns. And let's say as people start to grow in the trust, and the trust is doing good for the city says, hey, this trust, like, I love what they're doing with the green spaces. We're seeing all these gardens flourishing and these previously unused spaces. And so maybe they start letting more pieces of land be used for the easement and the easement applied. That's a little bit how green space could work out. Now, in a more rural setting, let's say that you're somebody that has a farm that's 40 acres, okay? You got a 40-acre parcel, and you farm it. You've got a barn there, and you've got a house. Well, if you look at the compressor, if you had a 40-acre farm and only 4 people, let's say you had this, your house was in this R1 zone. 40 acres for 4 people, that's 10 acres a person. So according to this chart here, you're sort of off the charts. You've got 10 acres per person roughly, so you're looking at like $1,500 a person. It's going to cost you $6,000 a month to be a part of Jackson Trust. But maybe let's say you think the perks are so good that you really want to find a way to be a part of Jackson Trust. What you can do is you can apply the easement to your property. You would still own the property, but the easement is applied, and remember, the easement gives right to Jackson Trust members to come use your land. Now, if you play your cards right, you would assign yourself to this parcel that has the easement, so that then you don't have to worry about other people coming in to enjoy your land. It's sort of a workaround. You get to enjoy your land. It's the easement is applied, and let's say when you apply the easement, you put some language in there where you get to have a say how many people can use the land, and you claim your ID to that land, so it's just you using it. Now later, if more people join the trust and things get more tapped for space, and the trust needs to acquire more access to green space to maintain that 0.05 to 10 acre threshold, it might be that you will then have to let some additional people use your land. But that would only be under sort of dire straits if it was really necessity. And if we ever got to that point, my hope would be that you would want to share your land, because it would mean that people are so fiercely outcompeted that they need some space. They have to grow some food, and my hope would be that you would share some of your land for them to do that. Okay, so that is what you could do if you applied the easement. Now let's say there's only 3 acres that don't have the easement applied. Well, remember, anything that has the easement applied to it is no longer considered in the compressor. So if you applied the easement on, let's say, 37 of your acres, and then you only had 3 acres remaining for your house and your barn and whatnot, well, then you're looking at less than 1 acre per person. So now your fee is only like $50 a person. So that would be a workaround if you did have a more agricultural environment and you wanted to be a part of Jackson Trust. That would be a workaround. You could have the easement applied, and then you're no longer subjected to the compressor. Okay, now this is one of the most palatable of all of the perks. Jackson Trust knows the importance of transit. And transit is vital for infrastructure. If you want to max out the efficiency of your land, you have to have a way for people to ship goods to and fro. It's important for trade. And so Jackson Trust is basically, what it's doing is collecting all of those compressor fees from everybody, and it pours it right into the transit system. That is the bread and butter of the trust. That's where a lot of the money that's collected goes. So Jackson Trust, what it does is it designates cities across America. So here's some of the cities maybe that it is designated. Every city with a star on it's got a designation. And to all of these participating cities, the trust is going to try and arrange a way for you to get there and back. So maybe when it's first starting out, let's say Jackson Trust starts tomorrow, maybe it commissions some discounts to various bus lines, maybe Greyhound or Jefferson or something, and asks those lines for a discount, and maybe for trust members you can buy a ticket through the company with the trust reward package where it's only $20 or something like that. Okay, so the trust would try and make it such that you can get anywhere in the country for less than $100. And maybe you start off, and then maybe the trust eventually has its own bus line. It starts making some buses, and you can use those, or you can use any other bus. But you are able to buy through the trust purchasing platform a ticket that is at a discount price, and you can get anywhere. Let's say the trust says you can get anywhere in America today in today's currency, anywhere today for $100. And then, as the trust grows and grows and grows, then it sets its sights on the gold standard here, the maglev train. Okay, maglev trains are awesome. They literally levitate off the ground using magnetics, and they're some of the fastest land speed things in the world. I mean, they can go up to like 300 or 400 miles an hour. This particular train, the J train, it goes about 250 miles an hour. Okay, and Jackson Trust is all about the fine comforts in life, and so we're not going to pack you all into this train like a herd of cattle, like you would on a commercial airliner. Look at this spacious cabin here. This is what it looks like inside the J train. And you each have a really nice recliner that's made out of leather. You got plenty of leg room. You only have to sit next to one person. You're not squeezed in between 2 other people. And you've got these beautiful windows to look out. And you're sitting on top of the trees looking out at the land as you fly down, levitating on these rails at 250 miles an hour. And at 250 miles an hour, you can get from Los Angeles all the way clear across to Portland, Maine in about 11 and a half hours. And you can get from St. Paul all the way down to Charleston in like 6.5 hours. So it does take a little longer than flying, but given the fact it's a very comfortable ride, you probably don't mind. You're just going to put your recliner back. You're not going to worry about bumping into anybody. You're going to take a little snooze, read a great book. There's probably not any movies on the back of Jackson Trust's beautiful leather chairs, but you could bring your own DVD player with you. Okay, so that would be the hope, is that everywhere you see one of these yellow lines, that's a maglev rail that is built, and Um, and the hope would be that once the maglev rail is built, it costs a heinous amount of money to build it. But once it's built, it's actually very affordable to maintain. There's no moving parts. It's, you know, you don't have like a regular train, the wheels contacting the rail. This levitates. There's no friction of the parts there. So I've heard it said it's only about 3 to 5 cents a mile, a passenger mile, to maintain it. So you could make it from Los Angeles all the way to Portland for, let's say, 80 bucks. Or you can make it from St. Paul down to Albuquerque for, let's say, 50 bucks. Okay. That would be the great hope of Jackson Trust for that type of infrastructure. And you can also use the maglev rail system for freight too. You could shovel, transport coal or lumber or oil on it, whatever you want to transport. Okay, that's only one side of the transit system. Outside of the metro areas, you know, the maglev rail is only going to get you to the metro areas of those select cities. Once you get outside of the metro area, this is where you can use the Trust's county rail car system. So the rail car system looks, you know, if the Trust was implemented tomorrow, it would seek to do something like this in our landscape. All the yellow dots you see here are little stations along the way, and so the hope of the Trust, the aim would be that no person within a 30-mile radius of the metro area would ever be with more than 4 miles away from a station. So anywhere 30-mile radius of the metro, you're going to be within 4 miles of a station, so you could always count on walking there, biking there, or it's only going to be a very short drive there. And then from there, you can ride these beautiful rail cars. Okay, so this is what the rail car system looks like, Jackson Trust. You have these little cars here, and they're cars because they actually have wheels, so you can actually jump this thing out of the track and ride it down the street. These rails that you see here are electrified, and the car itself is electric, and it has an electric motor in it. And as it contacts the rails, it becomes electrified. As soon as it jumps off the track, it loses the contact and loses its electricity. These cars don't have batteries on them, so as soon as they jump out of the rails, they stop, and that prevents people from driving away with them. Okay, the trust owns these rails. You can't use these rails for your own, vehicles. Let's say as a trust member, you can use the rail car system for free. It's part of your subscription, so you don't ever have to pay to use a rail car. You always have to stow the rail cars in the station. So you take one out of the station, you check it out, you use it to where you're going, and then when you get to the next station, you check it back in. Then there's no fee for you. Let's say if you're not a trust member, you can still use one, but maybe it's 10 or 20 bucks a ticket. The trust also, just out of good faith for the community, paves a nice bike trail and walkway along anywhere that the trust's rails reside. So that's a pathway that is not going to be just for trust members. Anybody can use it. Anybody can go up and down. You know, there's a lot more bikers biking in and out of the cities, and so now these pathways create many more opportunities for people to even bike into the cities when they make their daily commute. Now, let me show you some of the features of this rail car here. This rail car is less than 4 feet wide. This one here is only about 46 inches wide. So it's very small. This is one of the larger rail cars, believe it or not, because you can fit 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, about 9 passengers in this thing. This thing is about, what is it? It's about 12 feet long, okay? So you can fit, think about that, 10 people in here, 12 feet long, less than 47 inches wide. And what's cool about this rail car is it has an electric motor on it, contacts the rails, and then it turns the motor on. And it also has a couple of levers here that operate it. You're going to see it's very simple. There's no speedometer, no gas sensors, no thermometers, no actuators, no nothing. You got a couple of good old classic wooden handles. Okay, This handle right here, this is the throttle. So once you make contact with the rails, a little green light illuminates to tell you made contact, and then you push the lever forward and away you go. These are not ruggedly built, these rail cars. They're very light, and so the rail car system in the Trust, you only are going to go 40 miles an hour. 40 miles an hour is the max. These cars are not designed for high speed. The car does have a sensor on the front that can detect anything in front of it, and if it does detect it, it will brake. So effectively, this beautiful little chariot here that you see, this is a self-driving vehicle. Okay, you can pile in here, you can flip the throttle and sit back and read your favorite book as you get back from your really tough long day of work. Flip the throttle, this thing will self-drive you to wherever you want to go, and you can be assured that if anything's in front of it, it will brake. Okay. Now, let's say you're coming into a station here. What will happen is you can see this is sort of an intersection. You've got two rails that are disconnected from one another. As you approach this, what's going to happen is a little ramp is found here, and these rail cars have tires on them actually. So the rail, as it approaches the ramp launches it off the rail, and then it disengages its contact with the electrical system. So now you're just free coasting. And if you don't play your cards right, if you don't pull the handbrake, you're going to run into the fountain. You can run into the square fountain. You don't want to run into the fountain. So you're going to coast, and you're not going to have any power now because you've disengaged. There's no battery on this thing. It's just a motor that's direct contact with the rails. So once you get to about right here, what you're going to do is you're going to come down over here. You're going to grab this little lever, and you're going to yank it, and what it's going to do is it's going to push down these swivel casters. It will push down the caster plate, and now this thing is lifted up. It's on swivel casters, and you're just going to grab one of these handles and gently guide it over here to the next rail. Disengage the swivel casters. It's going to drop back into the rail. Now it's electrified again. You can jump back in, push the throttle, and away you go. So I want you to just think about this for a minute. You've just had a really tough day. You're a teacher and your students were totally unruly all day long, and then you had a really boring department meeting afterward where all you heard was negative feedback. So you come home from that day of work, you get on this rail car, you flip the throttle, you sit back in one of these comfy chairs and you read your book, chugging a nice 40 miles an hour along some beautiful scenery, all the way till you get to the station that you want to get to. That would be a pretty luxurious commute, if I do say so myself. Okay, I dream about that commute. Okay, so I am very for the county rail system. Now, when you approach the station that you want to get to, it's no problem. You engage the swivel caster. You just push this thing right into the garage. You check it out with the attendant. They make sure that the thing is back, and then you're free to go. If you check out a rail car and you don't bring it back, there's going to be a fee. And if you don't bring it back within a month, you're going to have to buy this thing. But this thing is quite nice because it only costs $1,000 to build. Okay, so if you break it, it's only $1,000. And you could probably even build one of these yourself if you needed to. Okay. So they're very simple machines. They just have a couple of rail wheels on them and electric motor, maybe a heater, maybe an air conditioner, maybe not. Now, when you get to the station, you can put your rail car in the rail car garage. You might need to get the rest of the 3 or 4 miles to your house. You might need a little other personal vehicles. So you might come in here and you might talk to this lovely lady and give her your ID, or she'll make you have a signature, or maybe you do a thumb scanner. You do something to check out one of these other vehicles. One of the things the Trust is really into is it wants to make sure that you never have to use a device or an accessory to access the perks of the Trust. So you only will ever have to have just you. You might have a photo ID, you might have a thumbprint scanner, but there might be devices that help to make the authentication of your identity easier. But if push comes to shove, you will only ever just need you. You don't have to ever carry a device with you. So if even at the worst case scenario you don't have any of your photo ID or anything, you could still just make a signature and have it verified by the clerk, and then you could check out another vehicle. So here's some of the options here. You could grab this lovely little small car here. You could jump on a bike or a scooter, or grab one of these scooters, and maybe there's some rollerblades or what have you. That's going to get you the final 3 miles to your house. Remember, in Jackson Trust world, there's no station that's ever more than 4 miles away from anybody in a 30-mile radius of the metro of a participating city. Okay, so that's the rail car system. And now, Jackson Trust is starting to get a little bit more enticing, isn't it? You've got this maglev transit system, you've got the county rail system, and for me, I hope to move back to my hometown of Red Wing someday. So if I want to commute to the city, I got to find a way to get to either this station here or this station here. I'm going to jump on that rail car and I'm going to just float away to this station, and then jump over to this one, and then jump over this one, and then I'm just going to ride this all the way continuously to my destination and love every minute of it. And I'm even going to enjoy jumping out and hoisting that big lever and manhandling that rail car onto the rails, because it gives me a little bit of personal responsibility in the thing. I'm not sitting there passively, while some other employee drives me to where I want to go. I actually have to take ownership of this rail car. I've got to be the one that manages it. I got to be the one that drives it. I've got to be the one that checks it out, and I have to be the one that brings it back safely. And if I don't, I have to pay for it. Okay, the economy of Jackson Trust is that it relies a lot on labor trade. So let's say we live in an era where it's uncertain what the value of the dollar will hold. I mean, these are very tenuous times. We're trillions of dollars in debt, and so the only difference between us now and our currency being completely and utterly worthless is just a matter of good faith. And if we ever become aware of some really horrifying, egregious acts that our nation have committed, or people lose faith in America, our currency would crumble in a second, because it's not built on wise spending. It's not built on prudence. It's built on debt and exploitation. So Jackson Trust would use the currency so long as it's available and so long as it's dependable. But if times get tough, Jackson Trust is quickly suited to switch over to a labor trade system. So what that would mean is, if let's say you took, let's say, a maglev train to Portland, Oregon, let's say, in today's money that would cost $60. Well, $60 is about 2 or 3 hours of labor at a very average hour rate. So maybe Jackson Trust says, okay, it's instead of charging dollars, or instead of charging any kind of currency, it charges you hours of labor, and then you have to pay that labor back as sort of like a community service to the trust. So if you wanted to go to Portland, it says, okay, you're taking this ticket. That ticket is going to cost you 2.7 hours. And then you take another ticket, that's another 2.3 hours, and there's a tab of how many hours, and then you have to pay that labor back. And there's a variety of ways that you could do it. So one way you could do it is you could join the trust's artisan apprenticeship program and actually start learning how to build some of the components that the trust utilizes. So for example, this is a picture of the rail that the rail car system uses. And this is a 4-foot long rail, and anybody in their garage could figure out how to cast this out of cast iron. Let's say you want to figure out a good way to use your labor to pay back your labor debts. You build yourself a melting furnace, and you get a nice big crucible, and then you sign up and apply to be a part of the artisan apprenticeship program. The trust is going to send you like a foam core mold of this rail that you can use to actually make a mold and cast your own rail. And if you get good at it, what you can do is you can take that rail to one of the trust commerce centers, and they'll inspect it. If it meets a certain set of standards, they will compensate you for the rail that you give. And so let's say for a rail like this, the trust would normally spend $200 or $300 for a cast iron 4-foot segment of rail like this. And so if you deliver a rail like this to the trust, it's going to comp you like 10 hours of labor. So it would be a way that you could pay off your debts. So it's sort of like a bartering system. You're bartering the hours of time spent in for the goods that you make for the goods that the services that the trust provides that you opt into. That is, at the end of the day, what currency is. It's just an easier way to barter, and the trust is set up so that it could even operate without currency. If you want to just go off of your labor trade, that's fine. You log how many hours you have to pay, and then you pay those hours back in a variety of ways. You might like to build these rails, and so you build them. Or maybe you don't want to worry about building anything. You just want to show up and help install them. And so that's the way you pay off your labor trade. There's a couple of different ways you can do it. And with how many rails the trust wants to build, there's plenty of work for everyone. Okay, everyone can be out there swinging a hammer, spiking rails to a piece of wood. Okay, the governance structure of the trust, it would have some elected reps and some appointed reps. It generally tries to find reps from the neighborhood, and maybe you would actually elect those reps, and they're the ones that sort of speak for you in the trust, or you maybe have some appointed reps that oversee bigger territories or regions like county or statewide regions, and then you have the trust chairman. And the trust chairman is a lifetime appointment, and the trust chairman can veto decisions of the board. So at the top of Jackson Trust, there's a board of like 20 or 40 people. Okay, and then at the top of the board is the trust chairman. What's cool about the trust is that any elected rep or appointed rep is going to be a member of the trust. So they have to be subject to the compressor themselves. So even the board members way at the top, the very top most powerful voices in Jackson Trust, they themselves are subject to the exact same math equations everybody else is subject to. So there's not going to be any bigwigs with 2,000-acre ranches in multiple parts of the world just putting their feet up on desks, lavishing themselves with all the comforts that they can provide. Everybody that's in the governance structure of the trust is themselves subject to the fees that are determined by the compressor equations. Another thing is that everybody that is a rep or an appointed rep has to attend General Assembly. So the trust at different times a year, depending on where you live, has General Assembly, and that is one of the main requirements of the trust. You have to show yourself in person at General Assembly, and that's where you're going to have some meetings about things, and you're going to vote about some things, and you have to go 3 out of 4 years. And so if you are in any type of position of influence, you also have to attend General Assembly. This is a major way to sort of circumvent corruption, because if you are doing some bad stuff, you're going to have to face the people at General Assembly. And in General Assembly is sort of an open thing. You will have your designated times and locations that you go, but there's always a couple of free spots available for anybody from any other jurisdiction to attend your General Assembly. So if you are doing some shady stuff, people can come and find you once a year. And so keeping that in mind, you're going to do your best to make sure you represent the people well. Okay, so that is a little bit of a presentation of Jackson Trust. Jackson Trust, in summary again, its main heart is to make sure that everybody has a fair chance of getting the resources that they need. Its main heart is to consolidate unused space and to improve the efficiency of space. Its main heart is to make sure that one person doesn't have 600 acres of land sitting around just for nothing, while 10 people elsewhere are barely struggling to get outside of their house because they have no land and they don't have any way to make food, and they don't have any place to grow food. So that is the heart. Its heart is take what you need, but don't take too much, because we are getting full in this world, and the more that you hoard, the quicker the world will become full. And the more you hoard, the worse off we'll be in the long run for everybody. So keeping that in mind, that's the heart, but these are some of the non-negotiables of Jackson Trust. If any one of these changes, it's no longer Jackson Trust. Jackson Trust will never use a digital currency and will always accept the US dollar. It might be the case that a US dollar today is only worth a thousandth of a cent tomorrow. Again, when you have trillions of dollars in debt, it's a finger snap that will make that collapse. It's a house of cards. But Jackson Trust will always accept it. You might have to bring a wheelbarrow like they did in days before World War I. You might have to bring a wheelbarrow of American dollars to the trust, but they will always accept it. And if bringing that wheelbarrow is too cumbersome, then you can always still do the labor trade. You know, it's set up for that bartering system. Okay, you will never need an accessory to authenticate your identity to access the trust benefits. There might be devices that help to authenticate your identity, but they won't be required. They might make it easier for everyone, but you will always, always, always have the option to have somebody look at your photo ID, to have somebody look at your fingerprint, to have somebody look at your signature. You will only ever have to use you and yourself to prove your identity. Okay, the trust will never utilize a military force for the purpose of taking life. If the trust becomes wildly powerful and has all of these rail systems, and it becomes tons of members join it, and then now people are starting to sabotage parts of the trust. People are starting to blow up the maglev rails, and people are, they're mad at the trust, so they take a jackhammer to the county rails. The trust is never going to use a military force to protect its assets at the expense of human life. The trust will always be a pacifist entity, and so if somebody blows up, some yahoo blows up a rail, it's going to send out the bat signal, and you're going to have to bring a bunch of trust members in to fix it, and there'll be a great opportunity for them to pay off their labor trade. So it's just going to fix stuff that breaks, and it's not going to stop at the expense of taking human life, any of the parts of it. As soon as you're talking about a entity that uses a military force to protect its assets, it's no longer Jackson Trust, it's something else. Okay, and then lastly, the trust chairman at the very top will always be a resurrected Jewish Nazarene born of a virgin in Bethlehem. Okay, and that power person will always have the veto power. As a person who's not a resurrected Jewish Nazarene born of a virgin, you will only ever be a board member in the board. You can't ever be to the top position of power. So Jackson Trust, while you don't have to have any religious identity or affiliation to join it, it is heavily influenced and operated by leaders who are Christ followers and have a heart to serve him, and they are always conscientious of the mind of Christ, because he is the forever chairman of Jackson Trust. Okay, so if those were the bylaws, those were the non-negotiables of the trust, let's say that there is 20,000 limited edition founder contracts now available. They're available tomorrow, and you can sign up for one. It's a 3-year contract. It has really huge perks here because we're trying to get some momentum. For one in a lifetime opportunity, these contracts have transferable benefits, meaning you can pass them on to your next of kin. They never expire, and these are the benefits. You will, in your membership, always have a free phone and internet. If you sign up, I will personally deliver the phone to you, and you will be ready to go, and you can pass that phone on for as many members as you want, and it will always have access to the Jackson Trust internet network. You're always going to be locked in at that 7 cents a kilowatt electricity rate forever. Pass it on for as many generations as you like. You're going to have complimentary bus or maglev train tickets to participating cities. Normally in today's currency, that's 60 to 100 bucks a ticket. But with this founder contract, you get maybe 10 or 12 free tickets a year. for the rest of your life. To any one of those cities with a star on it, you can get there for free. You get 10 to 12 of those a year, every year, as long as Jackson Trust is around. You always will get free passage on county rails. You know, it's unlimited passage. As long as you don't break the rail car, you can check it out and turn it back in and use that rail car as long as you want without any cost to you. You also are at a lifetime locked-in compressor rate. So right now my compressor rate was $85 a month if I was to do Jackson Trust tomorrow. And I will be locked in, assuming I don't move from my house, I will be locked in at that $85 rate for the rest of my life. Even if the dollar crumbles and is worth nothing tomorrow, I will forever have to pay only $85 a month. Okay. So then, and then also you have unlimited access to at least 1 acre per person of green space. So I'm going to get a tethered to a piece of green space. That's 1 acre, and if that acre goes away, a different acre will be made available. That is another part of the contract. So keeping in mind those perks, would you sign one of the limited edition founder contracts? There's only 20,000 of them. They're going like hotcakes. Would you sign one? Why or why not? Okay, that's what we will discuss when we visit our Jackson Trust Town Hall. And if you do sign the contract, your only obligations, the only 2 things that the trust requires of you is, 1, you have to pay the compressor fee depending on whatever zone you live in, and it would be very clear what that fee will be before you sign. And then you have to attend General Assembly once a year. And it might be at different locations. You could join the group that is the people in your jurisdiction, or maybe you could be a floating member and somebody else's at a different time of the year. It doesn't matter. But you have to attend a General Assembly once a year. Those are the only 2 obligations to be in Jackson Trust. So keeping in mind the perks, keeping in mind the bylaws, keep in mind everything else, would you sign that contract? Why or why not? Okay, we'll talk more about this at the town hall, and I'll look forward to hearing what you have to say about it and hear some of your feedback at Jackson Trust. And then we'll also look at some of the biblical applications of this. What parts of the trust seem to be biblical, or is there parts of the trust where it steps outside of what God intends for his people? We'll talk a little bit more about sort of the biblical perspective of the trust, and also just population growth in general. All right, you guys. Thank you.